Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to demonstrate on how to figure out your angle that you cut the end of your bows on this chicken house for your header board. That's if you're putting a header board in. If you're not, I'll explain that too. But anyhow, I have a jig set up, and this is the actual jig that I use for my chicken house, which it's set up for a 7-foot wide chicken house. So the blocks that I have on this jig, they're set at 7 feet. So the base of the chicken house is going to be 7 feet wide. But my mom's chicken house is going to be wider than that. But I just grabbed my jig that I had for my chicken house for demonstration purposes. But the whole purpose of this is to show you how to cut the angle for your header board. So right here's the jig. All it is a board with a couple blocks fastened to it. There's a block there and a little block there to clamp your bows to. So there I got them clamped in place, and of course you see they come up and they meet, they overlap. I have one sitting up on top of the other. Well, in order to figure out the angle for your header board, and I use a 2x4 as your header board. You can use a 2x2, you could use a 1x3, a 1x2, whatever. I use 2x4. So what you do is where these overlap, at that point there, and of course right down there, that's center point of your peak. So what you want to do is take a straight edge and eyeball it and line it up to where them two boards meet. Look down there and see where they cross one another, and you draw a line there, and that would be center point of your two bows where they come up and meet at the point, or at the hip of your, or the peak of your roof. So what you do is you draw that line, and if you was just going to match these bows up to one another and screw them together to hold them together like an up, you know, like a at the peak or whatever, and weren't going to put a header board in, that'd be fine. You just cut it, and then of course the 2 points would mate up together, and you could put some screws in there, hold them together. I like screwing these bows, the tops of the bows, into a header board. Gives them more strength. And then if you ever decide to have a hanging chicken feeder, some of them that hang, you know, they got a bail on them and you hang them like a bucket, and then it's got the tray underneath. You can always have your cable or your rope or whatever hanging off that header board, holding your feeder up off the floor. But anyhow, and the header board gives you extra strength there. But if you're going to put a 2x4 header board in here, a 2x4 is 1.5 inches wide. So that line there is your actual center point where those two bows would meet. But if you're going to have a header board's going to be taking up some of that space, because they're not going to meet one another. They're going to meet up to the edge of the 2x4 or your header board. So what you got to do is, from the center point where those two would meet, you got to go over 3/4 inch. So right there's the line where they would meet one another, but being they're going to be meeting a 2x4, half the distance of the thickness of a 2x4 is 3/4 inch. So you're going to move over 3/4 inch, draw your line, and that's where you're going to make your cut, right there. And same way with that bottom one, you're going to have a line drawn on that, and you'll move over 3/4 inch and make your cut. And that way, that's the end of the bow that's going to actually meet up to your header board. And then you put some screws or nails or whatever, fasten it to your header board when you get your header board put up. I hope that didn't confuse you, but that's how you cut the angle for your header board. Like I said, you could use a 1x or a 2x, but whatever you use, from that center point mark, you got to move over half the thickness of the board you're using as your header board. So if you're using a board 1/2 inch thick, you're going to move over from that center line 1/4 inch, because your header board's taking up some of that space. That way you got the right angle, and it ain't moving the other end of your bows at your base. It ain't widening them or narrowing them, and the angle's proper. I hope you guys understood that. I'm going to get the rest of these bows put together, and I'm going to redo my jig for, like, say, an 8-foot base, because I think my mom's chicken house is going to be 8 feet wide. I'm going to mess with it because these bows are longer than what mine were, because I'm using 5-foot and 4-foot boards, as I showed you in the earlier videos where they're spliced. So if I go with wider,
It's long enough I can go with a wider base or a wider chicken house and still have plenty of headspace, being my bows are longer than what mine were. Because I used 8-foot boards, and like I said, these end up being about 9 foot or longer. So I can have a taller chicken house, a little bit taller chicken house, and also a wider base. So I got to get hold of my mom and ask her if she wants an 8-foot wide chicken house or 9-foot wide or what, and go from there. But I'll find out what she wants and set up my jig accordingly, and then I'll figure my angles and get them cut. Well, I hope I didn't confuse you too bad. When I get the rest of this done, in the next video of actually be part 4, this is part 3. When I do part 4, it'll probably be actually fastening bows to the base, or where we're going to build the floor basically, and I'll show you how I attach them and put in my header board. Well, I'll see y'all later, and don't forget I love you. Bye.